Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we are talking about Star Wars Legion and some pretty big and interesting changes that are looming on the horizon. AMG has been talking for a long time about faction identity and how it applies to the future of their goal for Star Wars Legion as it comes to 2025 and beyond. And we got some very interesting stuff in a interview with Will Schick that Gray Squadron Gaming did just recently, and I thought this part was really interesting and I want to talk about it. And if you want to watch the entire interview, I will have a link to it down in the video description below. You should definitely go and check that out because they talk about more than just this, but this was a particularly interesting part that I thought I wanted to elaborate on a little bit and provide a little bit of my insight as well as a little speculation, because speculation is fun. And of course, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments section as well. Plus, we are still doing that Halloween giveaways for a $50 Amazon gift card. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos that's going to run through Halloween, and we'll be announcing the winner at the end of one of my videos, so stay tuned for that. And if you're already subscribed, you're already halfway there, but I want to hear what some of your thoughts are on the faction identity and what some of the changes that they're going to be making. And the big changes that are alluded to are about ranks specifically for Operative and Commander. Will Schick did say that one of the things that they were going to be addressing in the future was how the Operative and ranks allocations were going to apply to specific factions. And I think that's really interesting because that does certainly imply that they're not going to be the same, which means they're going to change. And if they're going to change, it's probably not going to be a universal change across the board. It's going to differ by faction. So basically, the long and the short, the part that he doesn't say out loud, but he's basically spelling out for us, is that it's not going to be the same as it is now. The Empire, the Rebellion, the Republic, and the Separatists are not all just going to have two commanders and two operatives that they can take. Those values are likely going to be adjusted based on their faction. And I think that's a pretty cool way to look at faction identity, and another way to make them different. And I wanted to break this down for the four big factions because I really don't see a whole lot of changes coming to Shadow Collective just yet. But I'd love to see that happen in the future. But I want to focus this video on the big four factions. So I'll start off with the Rebels, because I think Rebels are one of the most interesting ones to talk about. Rebels have always been very hero heavy. That's part of their faction identity. It's their heroes that are the difference makers. They're the ones that get all the screen time. They're the ones that are most notable. And then they're some of the characters that pretty much define Star Wars as we know it. And I feel like out of all of them, they're very heavy on both commanders and operatives. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rebels be changed to allow up to 3 commanders and 3 operatives both. I wouldn't be surprised to see both of those values go up a little bit, and that would allow some more thematic builds. It would allow for more of those things, like if you're talking about trying to get the ghost crew together. I had talked to Will Schick a long time ago about doing the ghost crew, and considering that they've done the Bad Batch and they put like 5 or 6 guys all in one unit. How would they then approach doing something like that for the Ghost Crew? You've got the Bad Batch all together. How are you going to do the Ghost Crew? You're going to do them the same way? Well, you certainly could, but since there's like 6 of them, if you were to make 3 commanders and 3 operatives or something like that, and it may not be a flat, like they're each going up by 1. It may be a total of, hey, you can take 6 as long as it's a balance in between them or something like that. That could be a special thing that the Rebels get. But I expect the numbers to go up for commanders and operatives for the Rebels, whereas for other factions they may not, or they may go down. For the Empire, I think this one is very interesting. Empire's always been kind of leader heavy, so I don't anticipate like their leaders or their commanders going down. They may stay about the same. I don't think they'll go up, but I do think their operative count may go down. Empire has always been very stormtrooper heavy. They've always been more focused on their gun lines rather than their heroes, although they certainly have their heroes. But I've always thought it was very interesting that, because there's not a whole lot of operatives for the Empire. Of course, you do have bounty hunters, and I'm really not talking about the mercs as much in this video, because mercs are kind of spread out all over the place, and more mercs can always come. But as far as, like, the faction specific, the faction identity characters, it was very interesting to me when Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister came out with this associate Fifth Brother ability that allowed you to take two operatives without that second one counting against your against your rank limit. And I was like, well, why would I ever want to do that? I'm not going to be running Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister and another operative, because I'd also have to have a commander, and the only other operative that kind of fits with those I always figured was probably Vader operative, but I just like Commander Vader so much better. And that's the interesting thing to me. And that was always my takeaway. And I think now, if you look at the idea that maybe the Empire will only have one operative slot, then suddenly Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister's associate keyword there makes a lot more sense, because it does make sense to run them together, and it makes sense for that ability to actually mean something, because in no build that I've ever put together has that ever seemed like a valuable keyword. And all of a sudden, that could account for a balance shift within the faction identity. And that could give running both Inquisitors together a little bit more meaning, especially in a faction where you can only have one operative, potentially in the future. So that's kind of my guess for the Empire. I could see them going down to a single operative slot. But let me know if you disagree, because again, I could definitely be wrong. It could be... And this might also be a rule that says, if you're running mercs, maybe that's an exception to the rule, because the Empire does hire bounty hunters from time to time. And so is there going to be a way that you can do the Empire Strikes Back, hey, I want all these bounty hunters working for the Empire? Or maybe that would just be a battle force that could allow that. Because again, just because the rank structure might change, and you say, oh man, that hurts my ability to run this cool list. Well, it doesn't mean you can't ever run that cool list, because battle forces can always break those rules. And that's another cool thing. Onto the Republic. Let's talk about the Clone Wars factions here. I feel like Republic is kind of in a similar position to the Empire, but not identical. I do think that they might see their operatives shrink because there are so few, and also another reason for their operatives to shrink might be in part because of Padme and R2-D2. They may not want you running double secret mission. Granted, secret mission is not quite as important as it used to be, but if you're running double secret mission, that still can have a pretty significant impact on your games. And frankly, I could see there being reasons not to run both operatives. There's really only 3 right now with the Bad Batch, Padme, and R2, but you do have a lot more commanders. There's potentially a lot more on the way. There could be more operatives on the way too, as far as Jedi are concerned. Like a Quinlan Voss and things like that. I can definitely see more operatives coming to the Republic, but I think that if they were to do more Jedi operatives, they certainly leaves the doors wide open for a Jedi-specific battle force. And you could, again, battle forces can always break the rules. So if you wanted to run Anakin and Padme and R2, there's always room for a movie-specific or an Anakin-specific battle force. So I mean, you kind of already have that with the 501st, but there's always room for them to potentially break the rules. But I definitely could see that happening. I could see maybe commander value going up for the Republic, although granted, I don't think that's really necessary. That would largely depend on what other Jedi are planning to come out. If they're looking at having cheaper commanders, you do have some, especially if you're trying to go with a clone-heavy list. If you wanted to run Rex and Cody, and maybe if they put Wolf in there, I could see, running a more clone-heavy, or being able to run both Anakin and Rex together and having room for an Obi-Wan. If you wanted to really have, Clone Wars specific characters, Obi-Wan and Cody, I could even see them maybe going up to 4 potentially for some lists, although it is a little harder to fit that many leaders in a Republic army and also have room for good, meaningful troops. Fortunately, we have 1,000 points now as opposed to 800 like we used to have, and there is a little extra room available. I think thematically I could see some cases where you fit more commanders in for Republic and less operatives. So my initial prediction is +1 for commander, -1 for operative on the Republic side. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, or if it is anything like that. Maybe it's something totally different altogether. And I feel like we're going to go kind of maybe the opposite direction with Separatists, even though they still don't have a whole lot of operatives for the Separatists. I feel like there's a lot more room for future operatives. There is certainly some speculation that we are going to see Savage Opress show up. He has appeared in some of the art, and he would fit very, very well into a Separatist kind of Count Dooku assassin, and also into, of course, a Dathomirian battle force if they ever do Night Sisters and do more with Dathomir, as well as the Shadow Collective, again, if they're trying to do more than there. So I definitely think the chances of Savage Opress coming in, especially with his, showing up in recent artwork, is very, very, very high. And not just high in general, but high for probably 2025 announcements, I would guess. I would say by Q1 2026, I'm guessing we'll have Savage Opress in game. But despite that, we also have a lot of bounty hunters that can work for the Separatists. There's definitely a lot of options for operatives here. I mean, there's bounty hunters that can work for a lot of factions. However, I think if we were going to see a faction go down in their commanders, I think it would be Separatists, mostly because of theme. There's not too many times where we see a lot of these guys working together, especially when it comes to super tactical droids. If you're only supposed to have one super tactical droid, granted, they could always change this up for battle forces, and you wouldn't necessarily have to make the generic super tactical droids suddenly unique. It wouldn't matter, but in the case of a lot of these, like certain super tactical droids are supposed to be super rare, so should you really have two of them on the board at the same time? Are Dooku and Grievous gonna really share the battlefield? Are they gonna share control? There's a lot more of these characters on the Separatist side that just don't strike me as somebody who want to share their power. And so I see a lot more out for themselves. Like, no, I'm going to get the glory for this battle. Especially when it comes to General Grievous. Poggle the Lesser, maybe. I mean, definitely you have the big battle in Episode 2 where a lot of these folks were present. You had Count Dooku and Poggle the Lesser were both there. However, although I think that leaves room for Dooku to possibly be allowed into maybe a Geonosian battle force, because they are still supposed to be doing a Geonosian battle force at some point. I don't really see it coming out right now because I just don't think there's enough to really support that. But that was one of the promises that they made when they first announced Geonosians coming to the game. But I do think if you're going to lower the commanders, you up the operatives, you make a lot more room for... It makes there's a lot more thematic sense. I could see Dooku having both Asajj Ventress and then also having a bounty hunter. And I could see Maul and Ventress or Maul and... maybe not Maul and Savage Opress under the Separatists at the same time, but maybe. I mean, it is a fun game. You can make, not every list has to be perfectly canonical, but it does make a lot more sense for these guys to hire bounty hunters, and it may be a conditional operative that you can have up to 3, or maybe even up to 4, as long as X number of them are mercenaries. And so that may factor into some of the faction identity as well. I think that could be really cool. They may want a rule against, like, hey, Dooku can't have more than one apprentice at the same time, so you can't have Savage and Asajj in the same list under Dooku. But then again, wouldn't it be cool if you did, and they were kind of competing to see who could do better for their master? I think there's a lot of really cool things that they can do with the Separatists in that regard. But those are some of my takes on how I envision the new ranks to kind of change. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that it's going to be as simple as like a +1 or -1 for commander and operative rank restrictions per factions, or do you think it will be a lot more nuanced? This one is allowed here if... Do you think there'll be a lot of if-then statements in the rules, or do you think it'll be more clear-cut? And what do you think I got right, and what do you think I got wrong? Let me know in the comments. You can also join our Discord. Again, don't forget to check out that video, that interview. It's going to be linked down in the video description below. And if you want to check out social media, I have links for Facebook, Twitter, all that other stuff. It's all in the video description below as well. And if you're interested in supporting the channel on Patreon, you can do that as well. And I'm going to put all that stuff down in the video box. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys help make this channel possible. Thank you so much for your continued support. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. And always wash your socks.